Welcome, everybody, to the Depths of Motherhood podcast. This is a special season dedicated to the tribe of the mother. But also, I know any mothers listening will find this extremely valuable. I've created each episode to offer simple, digestible, and supportive information, which I hope will educate and inspire anyone who listens. So, this is by popular demand. Please help us to educate and support the tribe holding the mother. Look forward to passionate and highly knowledgeable guests dedicated to reclaiming the essence of birth and embracing conscious parenting. Throughout our time together, our guests will serve as the guiding voices, illuminating the path towards a deeper understanding of preconception, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. This is with the mother and the baby being the center of the exploration. In the show notes, you'll discover the link to Nourished Mother package, which will offer many different resources to complement each episode. This is free for all members in the Women's Circle, or £33 for everybody who just wants to purchase the package. A heartfelt thank you to our incredible guests and immense gratitude to my partner for supporting me on this creation. And finally, last but not least, special thank you to Araya, my daughter, for being an endless well of inspiration. Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. Today we are exploring postpartum nutrition with Brittany Fox. She is a birth doula, nutritional therapist, and mother of 3. Brittany has walked this path herself, struggling with hormonal imbalances, brain fog, and fatigue, until she discovered some incredible tools that supported her on her own healing journey. Today we'll be exploring the hidden nutrient deficiencies many postpartum mothers face and how to support them needs. We'll be looking at how to recognize signs like anxiety, depression, and brain fog as more than just normal motherhood. We'll be looking at the key roles of omega-3s in recovery and how to include them in your diet. We go into the magic of adrenal cocktails, which maybe you've heard of by now, and we'll look at how they actually support the body. In the show notes, you are going to find a link to a beautiful free resource that has some meal ideas, the adrenal cocktail recipe, and a free gift from Brittany. You can find all Brittany's information in the show notes and find out how you can connect and work with her. Now, in the Women's Circle, we have a few events coming up. We have February's Mother's Circle, and we have an in-bulk ceremony. For both of them, you'll have to sign up before the 29th of January. And then we have a 3-day retreat in February called Sensual Wild Woman. This is a 3-day event, as I mentioned, but there will be one day where we are joining for a live. So on the second day, there will be a live event where we'll be sharing a meditation and a tarot card pull with my sister. And then we'll be opening up to share our insights or experiences in the group. All these events are by donation. And if you're in the gold membership, you're going to receive these recordings, invite, Zoom links, all of it straight to your email anyway. Thank you so much for supporting these episodes. We've had such beautiful feedback for season 8. It's been such a gift to receive your messages and your appreciation. Okay, before we begin, let's just drop into our body, coming to notice your breath, moving in and out. And let's check in with the back of the body today. If you can welcome some gentle movements of the spine and trace your awareness from the base of your spine all the way along the back of the body up to the neck. And then come to place your awareness at the very crown of your head. And let's take 3 breaths, really noticing the sensations at the crown of the head. And on your final breath, feel your body soften and open. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Brittany for sharing her wisdom and her energy in this space. Today, we welcome Brittany Fox onto the show. Welcome.
Hello.
So nice to have you here. And on Instagram, you are Deep Roots Nutrition. So first of all, I want to know where that name came from and how you got into doing the work that you do.
So I actually worked as a birth doula and a midwife assistant for several years prior to becoming a nutritional therapist. And I worked with a lot of moms and a lot of postpartum women before pregnancy, during pregnancy, and after pregnancy. I always noticed this trend of women after having children that they would reach out with questions, and I didn't always have answers, and I didn't know where to send them. And it wasn't until I started experiencing some of my own health challenges and recognizing that a lot of it stemmed back to how I cared for myself after having children, or the lack of care I provided for myself, that I really began to dig deeper. And I decided to go back to school and become a nutritional therapist. And that's what kept pulling me back, was that a lot of health issues actually start around the postpartum time, and women may not realize it because they may not begin having symptoms. It's not until they're kind of out of the thick of the stress of a new baby and the adjustments and stuff that they realize, oh, I actually don't feel very good. But they don't often tie it back to how they cared for themselves in postpartum. And so I decided that that's what I wanted to specialize in. And Deep Roots, I think, just called to me of this idea of, as we really nourish ourselves as women, like deeply nourish ourselves, mind, body, and soul, then we are actually able to show up better for our families, which is, I know, what most of us want. But then, even after our kids are older and we're kind of on our own again, we're able to have better health and be able to do more things that we wanted to do. And so I think that mothers give everything that they have to their families, and then they're kind of left depleted at the end. And so my goal is to really help moms through this process to deeply nourish themselves, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, so that as they're raising children and as they're done raising children, they actually feel good.
Thank you so much for sharing. I feel so deeply that this conversation is because this whole season is dedicated to the people supporting the mothers. Sometimes, if the mother's doing her thing, she's caring for the baby, she's making time to care for herself, it can look like things are going okay from the outside. But like you
Mhm.
said, it's what's happening on the inside and how is that going to unfold later on down the line. So I hope that for people listening to this, they receive some tips and some insights on how to nourish the mothers, maybe if they're not even asking for it.
Yes.
So how could it play out if a mother isn't nourished in the postpartum phase? And actually, if you could just explain what is the postpartum phase, when what time frame are you looking at when you're supporting the mothers that you do, and like how could it play out if a mother isn't nourished and deeply nourished during the postpartum phase?
I'm actually really glad that you asked that question, because we have this misconception in society that postpartum is a few weeks or even a few months. In reality, it can last years after having a child. And the way that we care for ourselves after having children can determine how long that is going to influence us. And we tend to think that after that 6-week mark, it seems to be this magic mystical number that we've made up, that everything goes back to normal and that mom should be able to jump back into exercise and caring full time for her family, or going back to work full time while also having a newborn and all of these things. And the reality is that is a lot for a mother's body. And so I would say that postpartum is several years after having a child. But really, the way that you care for yourself in that first year can impact how long that period lasts.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And it is one of them, like that made me laugh when you said this magical number. It's like, where does all this come from anyway? When we start to look at women as individuals and what their individual needs are and nutrition
Yeah.
are, that's the holistic way of living and caring for mothers.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some common nutritional deficiencies that you've noticed when you've been supporting mothers?
So there can be a variety of them, and it's really going to depend on how well nourished the mother it was going into pregnancy and how well she's taken care of in postpartum. Some of the most common ones are going to be iron. We know that her body is providing a lot to the growing baby, and then there is blood loss during birth. So, iron is really important. B vitamins, omega 3s, and DHA. A growing baby requires a lot of omega 3s and DHA from the mother's body. And if the mother isn't consuming those in her diet, then the body will actually pull from her nutrient stores, including in her brain. And so it can really affect mental functioning and how the mom feels. Zinc, vitamin D, magnesium, vitamin C, all of these different nutrients actually do play a really important role in postpartum, but it's going to be different for each mother what specific nutrients she needs, depending on how she has cared for herself throughout pregnancy.
Mm. So basically, if we're noticing that there is something out of harmony, whether it's our emotions or something that's showing up physically, this is just a sign to look into the nutrition. We don't actually have to pinpoint it, but just highlighting first, let's take
Mhm.
into nutrition as a way to potentially bring ourselves back into harmony. And you said, it affects the brain. Do you think that's where the same baby brain comes from when mothers start to forget things, or do you think there's something else in that?
I do think it influences it, absolutely. There are physiological changes that happen to a mother's brain during pregnancy and postpartum that are biologically intended to happen for caring for the child and being more attentive to the child that is going to affect how we think. And we might feel a little bit more foggy because other parts of our brain are working. But the way that we are nourished, and if we are not nourished well enough, like if we are low on omega-3 fatty acids, then we are going to see an increase in brain fog and reduced functioning, and also an increase in things like anxiety and depression when we are low on specific nutrients.
Where can we find the omega-3s? What's a good source? And does it matter where we get it from?
Yeah, so this is actually something that unless you are consuming fish regularly or foods high in omega-3s, most mothers are likely going to need more. Because in today's typical society or different cultures, we may not be consuming as many omega-3s as we used to. Fish is going to be a really great option. You can also find it in chia seeds, walnuts, seeds, and flax seeds. Grass-fed beef is also going to have it, as well as grass-fed dairy, but it is going to be a little bit harder. Pasture-raised eggs will also have a little bit, but it's just really important to be intentional about the foods we're getting. And I do recommend supplementing if you think that you're not getting enough. So a cod liver oil supplement would be a great option.
That's what I was just going to ask you about supplements, because I'm reading this book at the minute called Inflamed by Rupa.
Uh-huh.
Have you heard of it? It's a really
Uh,
cool book. It's talking about everything in our society, basically. But one of the things that she's going into in the part that I'm reading is about the salmon and how the story is like when the beavers started to get really popular in Europe, they used to take all the beavers to make their fur, and then the dams weren't being created the way that they were before. And then the rivers were changing their path and the salmon were changing their path. These communities that had taken these fish and they'd eaten them their whole life, they were getting really good nutrients, were now faced with this dilemma that they had no food. And anyway, I'm probably going to be like killing this story, but basically, as they started to introduce like foods from the West, or fish farming started to happen, the nutrients from the fish are actually getting depleted as well, just because of the foods that they're eating. So sometimes we can do our best, but the food quality is just like not there. So what's your take on nutrients? I mean, on nutrients, on supplements. She's in now. This is my co-host.
no, darling. So that is another actually really important factor that plays into nutrient deficiencies in postpartum is our food simply just doesn't have the same nutrients that it used to. And so being mindful first and foremost of the food we're eating is going to be really important. But then sometimes supplementation is needed. Now, I am not one to just recommend just broad spectrum supplements to everyone because every person is going to be different in what they need. In general, I would say that animal organs are really, really beneficial in postpartum because they're so nutrient dense. I do enjoy cod liver oil for the omega-3s and DHA. It's just really important to choose a quality cod liver oil, whole food vitamin C, things like egg yolks. Increasing egg yolks in our diet from pasture-raised chickens are going to have more nutrients. And so even if I don't have specific supplements to recommend, there are ways that we can really try to increase just from the food we are getting.
Thank you for that. After I had Araya, I noticed that she had issues with her teeth. I was a vegan for 12 years before, and I
Yeah.
now have grass-fed supplements where they have the liver and the kidney, like all these organs inside. It's kind of peace of mind, but I know they're coming from the animal, so it's not
Yeah.
synthetic. There's also
Yeah.
a really good make that I have because I was following, oh, I forgot the name now. I'll put it in the notes, but they give this supplement of a cod liver, but it's also with this butter.
Better oil.
Yeah, and I take them and I notice, and she takes them too, and I notice a difference in her teeth as well, and also in her mood, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
She loves them.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point is that whole food supplements are going to be a better option for the body
Mm.
because the body's going to be able to recognize them easier and be able to use those nutrients. And so a lot of people aren't eating or animal organs today, but you can buy them in capsule form, which is a really great option for postpartum, especially an organ blend, kind of like you're describing, is going to have a variety of nutrients that are really, really deeply nourishing for the mom's body and helping replenish. And then if the mother's breastfeeding, she's also able to provide those nutrients to baby.
Yes. So I'll put that in the show notes for people, which ones I take, and maybe you can give a
Yeah,
list of ones that you trust as well, and then we can have
yeah,
them
I would love to.
options for the listeners. All right, so it's morning. Mother's probably like been up all night with baby, and she's hungry though. So what
Yeah.
would be a really nourishing breakfast that you would recommend?
For breakfast, I have a couple rules I'd like to share first. First and foremost, I want mothers to eat. They have to eat something. And working one-on-one with mothers, that is the number one issue I see is that they are not eating. Or if they're eating, it is a bite of this or a quick bite of this, and they're just simply not even getting enough in. So above all, eat something. And then if you can make it protein rich, that's going to be really beneficial throughout the rest of the day. It's going to support blood sugar, it's going to help with breast milk production and energy later in the day. And so those are kind of my big rules that first, just eat something, and second, try to make it protein rich. One of my favorite things actually to recommend for postpartum mothers is soup. And you can freeze it in individual servings, and then you can just pull it out and warm that up. It's quick, it's nourishing, it has a variety of nutrients. Mom doesn't have to think a bunch about what she's going to cook. So I do like having prepared frozen soup on hand. Eggs are really wonderful. They have all of those just beautiful and delicious nutrients in them. You probably are going to need more than a couple eggs if you're doing eggs. And so you can add in some cottage cheese or some meat or another protein source, and that's great. A lot of mothers love oatmeal in the morning, which isn't a bad option, but just keeping in mind that if we're eating a high carbohydrate breakfast, in order to have better energy and more stable mood later in the day, we're going to want to add some protein and some fat to help keep blood sugar a little bit more stable.
Which is a workout for me. Whoever's
I
watching
know.
the video
That
is
age.
seeing I'm just moving my daughter from left boob to right boob, left boob to right.
Exactly.
Honestly, my shoulders are great. When I look in the mirror, I'm like, oh, hello. But it's just from
Yeah.
lifting them. Honestly, they are some great ideas. And what I'll do is with any of these stuff, these tips that you give us, I will put them underneath. Maybe I'll add a little recipe with them so that
Yeah.
for anyone listening, you can just have them in the bag and you can be like, okay, I'm going to pull this together and see
Yeah.
if mother likes it. I mean, you
Yeah. I'm
have some
happy to share
options.
any recipes if you need some.
Great, that's perfect. All right, what's your take on smoothies?
Another great question, because I think sometimes in the health world, smoothies are demonized.
Mm.
And I understand that because we are living in a society where women think that we need to eat less to look a certain way or feel a certain way. And so a lot of women are significantly undernourished, and just drinking a smoothie for a meal isn't actually a full meal. But for a busy mom, including myself, sometimes it's all you can get in. And it's more important that we get something in. And so I do think that smoothies can be supportive, and it's more about how we build our smoothies and what we add into them. And so making sure we're getting protein is really important and some really nourishing fat sources. And then they can be a beautiful source of minerals as well, with some fruit, some bee pollen, some honey, raw milk, raw egg yolks. There's a lot of things we can actually add into a smoothie that can nourish the mother. And it's one-handed, it can be quick, and she's getting something in. So I do think they can be supportive. I would caution that in those first several weeks of postpartum, that smoothies may not be the best option because they're cold and our body really needs warm, well-cooked food. But later in postpartum, as a busy mom, I think they're a helpful option.
I love that you brought up this demonization of smoothies. I think I had this thought about them because I had an eating disorder when I was younger. And smoothies were one of the things that I thought, okay, it's safe to have this. And that's kind of all I would have in my day. So I had to change my
Yeah,
relationship with smoothies. And
absolutely.
actually, as when I was pregnant, I did some really deep healing on what happened to me with my relationship with food when I was younger. And I have a smoothie every single day now. But I noticed straight after I gave birth, I had the milk a little bit warmer. Like I didn't boil it. It was raw milk, but I had it a little
Yeah,
bit warmer. And that I thought it would taste really gross, but actually it was
yeah,
fine. Like I put a little
yeah,
bit of honey in it or maple syrup and delicious. And like if I have so much fruit, I don't even need that either. But it was
yeah,
just, I think for me, it was full of nutrients, but also psychological of just I'm having at least one thing today that I know will have everything that my body is asking for as I wake up. And that was just like self-care ticked off,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and I that's what I think about smoothies is they can have everything that you need. You can just really pack a lot of beautiful nutrients in there. And I love that you said that you kept the milk even a little bit warmer and that it didn't taste gross or that yeah.
That's the most important thing at this time is like have stuff that you actually want to eat that tastes
Yes.
good. Oh my God.
Yes. Yeah, because there's this concept also of so we want to physically nourish our body with nutrients, but the food needs to like nourish the mother's soul, especially after having a baby. I just feel like it should really taste good and feel good when we consume it because that is just as important as the food we're putting into our body.
Oh, totally. I'm feeling hungry right now, even just saying that.
That sounds delicious.
So we know that it can be tough sometimes to, like, for instance, if the family unit is pretty small, for say the husband or the partner to take the role on as chef and cook all these meals in postpartum, but asking the community, the family, to contribute to the meals, which is known as a meal train. Well, that's how I
Mhm.
do it. What would some good ideas be? Just like top 5 meals that you can think of that would be great for the mother? Because I was on a meal train and I thought, oh, I like have 2 meals that I could cook. Like I couldn't believe how difficult I was finding it to get ideas. So I'm really interested in what you have to offer.
So I love soup for postpartum. I feel like you can pack a punch with it. There's a lot of different nutrients. So that's always my first go-to is a soup with either a bone broth or a meat broth base. You can even do a vegetable broth base, but something that just has a lot of different nutrients in it for the mother's body. One of my favorite meals is a chicken and rice soup made with a whole raw chicken. And you boil the whole chicken and let it cook for a couple hours and then pull the meat off. And you have this really beautiful broth. And then you can add in your vegetables and your pre soaked rice. And it's easy for the mother's body to digest. It tastes so delicious. And it has all of these different nourishing aspects to it. Stews are another great option. Even just like a whole roast or a whole chicken or some like a large portion of like some shredded meat or something with some cooked veggies, really again focusing in on that protein for the mother's body as it's healing because protein is so important for that tissue repair and the healing that's happening within her body. Um yeah, so just really warm protein rich meals. I hope that that was helpful.
Yes. And let's make some recipes up too. We'll put them
Yeah.
underneath. Between us,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can think of 5 recipes. There
Yeah,
you
yeah,
go. Don't say we don't give you anything.
yeah. No, I am working on a postpartum recipe guide right now. It just is going to take some time, but I do have some recipes that I can share that have a lot of different nutrients and stuff, but are yummy because
That's
I think that
awesome.
it should be yummy for mom if possible.
Yeah, totally. All right. I saw on your one of your posts about an adrenal cocktail. Could you
Oh yeah.
explain what this is and how it benefits mothers in postpartum? And what do you put in it? Oh,
Okay. So another great question. And this is another trendy thing that is gaining popularity in today's society. And so an adrenal cocktail is essentially a blend of sodium, potassium, and whole food vitamin C. During postpartum, we know that a mother's body is under a lot of stress, lack of sleep, adjusting to a new baby, if she has multiple children that she's caring for, if she's working, there are so many different stressors coming in that her body has to handle. And the adrenals are responsible for our stress hormones. And so, really making sure that we're caring for them and nourishing them can be supportive in postpartum. Now, I don't think that the adrenal cocktail is the only way that we can support our adrenals, but I think that it's a nice way to get minerals in and some of these different nutrients that the body needs. So, for example, whole food vitamin C or is found in the largest concentration in the adrenals. And that is because it is needed to produce specific stress hormones. And vitamin C is commonly depleted in postpartum mothers. And so an adrenal cocktail a couple times a day is kind of just an insurance policy. Oh, I'm getting in some good vitamin C and some different minerals to help with the stress that my body is facing. Because postpartum is just going to add stress. It's a part of motherhood. And really, what we want to do is how can we support our body in that? And so, an adrenal cocktail is most commonly found in drink form, but you can make it into gummies, you can add it into a smoothie. Really, the idea is just those three nutrients: sodium, potassium, and vitamin C.
Wow, that's fascinating as well. I was craving orange juice during my pregnancy. Towards the final trimester, I was just like down in. And even when I was in labor, I was sending my partner off to the corner where they did like fresh orange juice. And I was like,
Oh,
get it, go get it. I was in Costa Rica, so it was like accessible. Everyone had orange
oh my goodness.
stores. I was just like
So
drink.
delicious.
I was surprised when the Naraya didn't come out like orange. Like she's just gonna be orange.
And that goes to show how intuitive our bodies are, that they can communicate specific needs. And
Totally.
leading into those, what sounds good? Like, what do I really want right now?
Yeah, a vegetarian up until like 2 months into my pregnancy. And then I craved ribs, like
Oh, yeah.
fatty ribs. And so we got some. Well, my partner got some, and I was looking at him like, well, I think I want them. I had this like vegetarian dish, and I'm like, what even is this? And I can remember the first time that I was deciding like I'm gonna eat meat again, and he was like, well, looks like we'll be ordering two portions.
Yeah.
But they will, and it was the fat, just like the fat
Yeah.
on it. That's why I love so, so much. Oh my gosh. Did you have any cravings when you were pregnant?
I'm, like, trying to think if I did. With my first, it was grape juice randomly,
Hmm.
just lots of grape juice. Where we lived had fresh grapes on the vine, and I would make grape juice, and I craved that a lot. I did not know what I know now back then, so I feel like my body was probably craving a lot of things, and I was maybe reaching for the wrong things, like, thinking it was
Mhm.
craving this, but it was actually craving something else. I just had never fed him those foods before.
You just didn't know what I was looking for.
Yeah, I'm like, I need something. I do think I was craving protein, but I didn't know how to get more protein, if that makes sense, and so I
Yes.
would add cheese to everything, and I wasn't vegetarian, but I don't know why it never clicked for me to eat more animal products but I would just add cheese to everything. Maybe I needed the calcium, but
It's so interesting, isn't it? And I think the going through pregnancy and going into motherhood for me has really been the deepest spiritual practice to getting to know what my body's actually trying to tell me so that I'm not just guessing anymore. Like I actually am beginning to understand her. Like
yeah,
I got
yeah,
you. There was one
yeah.
other thing that I used to crave, and it
Oh,
was
yeah.
tonic water and orange juice were like I always wanted something fizzy. I don't even drink fizzy drinks, but I just wanted something fizzy. So I don't even know what that's all about.
Yeah, our bodies are fascinating.
Honestly, they are. I remember this old wives' tale of, like mothers wanting to eat chalk
Uh-huh.
because of the minerals that are inside of them. And like it just comes back to this thing of our body is trying to tell us what it needs. Maybe chalk was the only thing around right then
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
mothers.
exactly.
Like, this will do.
Yeah, this'll have to do.
This stuff to do.
Exactly.
So, what are some things that you would say maybe be a bit more aware of in the diet that aren't really going to nourish you, even if you're craving them?
Seed oils.
Mm,
Highly processed oils. So you mentioned craving fat, and
mhm,
our body needs fat, really nourishing fat sources. And sometimes when we are craving kind of more greasy or fried food, it may be that our body actually does need more nourishing fat sources.
mhm.
And so if you are craving those foods, if you're craving French fries, you can fry them in some tallow and it's really delicious, or some coconut oil. but opting for healthier and more nourishing fat sources. I think that fat is actually a really important piece for pregnancy and postpartum, but really focusing on, does this provide my body nourishment? And certain fats actually do provide really deep nourishment, and others may not. And so when we're making food choices, what's going to provide nourishment and still taste delicious for my body?
Yeah, it's so interesting because we're we're like being asked to question these beliefs around food, and there's so many that are really to do with companies trying to sell certain products to us and demonizing certain things, like such as when they did with butter and tried to say
Yeah.
that margarine or these oil sprays are better. And
Yeah.
still, that is very deeply ingrained in many people's minds, especially like my mother. I was telling her the other day about, she finds it funny when I say mother because I actually call her mum, but podcast steps of motherhood, I always end up saying mother. Um, because she didn't realize, and I'm always encouraging her, have butter like with your food or use the animal fats. And she gets it, but it's still deeply conditioned that it takes some time to finally transition and fully believe it because there's a fear. And I think a lot of the fears is health, but mainly, am I going to put on weight? So
Uh,
any conversation with food, I feel is so emotionally linked as well with many of us is like, but once we start getting, well, I'll just speak for myself, but once I started getting deep nourishment from animal protein actually, and I started to include raw dairy, I started to notice that without trying, my body started to change. So I always was really puffy around my face. Like even when I was at my smallest and I was trying, like I was doing this on purpose. I had a lot of issues with my weight, but my face was still super puffy, like really round. But then during pregnancy and going into postpartum, when I was eating all this nourishing food, I just saw my body change and like my face, the puffiness, the inflammation that I was carrying, like the water that I was carrying just left. It blows my mind because I also see this during my cycle, like sometimes in the month, like I carry more fluids with me. And if I
yeah.
have certain herbs or certain food, I don't see that as much. So it's fascinating how food has such an influence on all layers of our being.
Yeah. I
So
think that that is so beautiful.
mm,
And we don't realize that some of these foods that have been demonized for so long that we are scared of and to eat are what our body is actually craving. And when we provide the body what it needs, it functions on its own. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about what I do is it's kind of just give the body what it needs and it will heal or it will do what it needs to do. And it's just always so fascinating to me to watch that process over and over, that when the body has what it needs, it functions more beautifully.
it's amazing that you get to see it with all the women that you work with because it goes from being this concept of you having this knowledge, but then you see it play out in people's lives and it turns into this knowing because you're witnessing it. And then you strengthen even more in the work that you're doing and probably your relationship with your own body. So
Yeah.
it's beautiful. So to wrap this up, what advice would you give to families and friends supporting the mother to help her nutritional needs? If there's any top tips, just to wrap it up.
I think to first recognize that the mother needs more support and more nourishment than she is telling you. And that we tend to, as women, we are strong and we are powerful and we are resilient and we will push through, especially for our children. And the concept you brought up earlier about who's taking care of the mother, and just for families and friends and people in the community to recognize that mothers need a lot of nourishment and a lot of rest. And so, if you are in a position where you can be checking in, or you can just be dropping food off, or if you're a spouse or a partner and you can remind her to just rest and that you'll bring her something to eat, helping her to slow down and to nourish her body are two of the very best things that you can do to support her.
That makes my heart feel so happy. I can feel that part of me in postpartum, like Yes, she's right. Because sometimes I think like I came from this background of just pushing and doing and always putting my needs last. And just the way my body is, I'm able to push through and it seems like I'm so healthy, but then I get to a point and I literally crash for like 3 days. Was how it would be. I would just like completely be wiped out. So instead of following like my natural rhythm and giving my body what it needs and the rest, I would push it to the limits. And so I didn't really see actually what was happening to me until I got this like coming back down to earth as I got sick or something. And
Yep.
I also didn't have people around me, saying, hey, you can slow down, like it's okay, we still love you. Instead, they were saying, wow, you do so much. That's amazing. Wow, I'm so proud of you. You're so inspiring. And yeah,
Yep.
it meant it in such a good way. They really did. They were telling me what they thought I needed to hear, what they thought I wanted to hear. But really, what I wanted was for them to say, we love you just as you are. You don't need to do that. And they thought that, they think that deep down, it's not like they don't, but it's just I feel for supporting mothers, we get into that point underneath where we're seeing this vulnerable
Mhm.
woman actually in this point who is needing to be held and to be taken care of, even if there's some resistance. Maybe she's still in maiden mind, or maybe she's like still
Yeah.
in work mode, like whatever it is. Just that saying, it's okay, you can chill. Let's have a cup of tea. Let's have some
Mhm.
bone broth. Like, and these are beautiful, beautiful moments. Mm.
Yeah. And it is such a postpartum is a difficult time, but it is also really sacred and really beautiful. And the more that we can help mothers to just embrace that, because it goes quickly, as you know.
Yeah, like what
You're in
happened?
survival mode, and then all of a sudden you have like a little toddler running around and to just
Yes, it's so wild. My friend gave birth, wow, it's probably like 6 months ago now. And I just dropped off some bone broth at the front door with some herbs
Mhm.
for tea and some herbs for yoni steam and some coconut oil. And I just left it at the front door and I said, I've left you something at the front door. And I didn't, it's like we have to also let go of the expectations of being thanked as well by the mother. Like,
Uh-huh.
because I feel that there's this, oh, I've done something for you. Now let me into your house to see your baby and have all your time and energy. Just leave it at the door if they've said
Yeah.
that. Just ask the mother what she wants. Does she want company or does she just want it left at the door? Like, it's
Yeah.
really about the mother at the
Yeah.
center.
It
Really.
is. It really
So,
is about the mother.
mm. So where can anyone and everyone, where can we find you? And do you offer your services online as well?
Yes, I do actually. So you can find me at my Instagram, deep.roots.nutrition is probably the easiest place. And through there is linked to my website, www.deeprootsnutrition.net, not .com, .net. But those are 2 places that you can find me. I do have a free postpartum replenishment guide that people can download. As we were mentioning earlier, how do we know specific nutrients? And I go through specific symptoms that a woman may be experiencing and what nutrients those may be tied to, as well as the best food sources to get them from. Instead of going straight for a supplement, here are the best food options because the body's gonna be able to use that a little bit better and recognize it. And so that's a resource that is available for free.
I'll put all of your information in and all of this good stuff that we've been talking about. So for anyone listening, everyone listening, thank you for being here. And I hope that this offers some inspiration, some wisdom for you to take on.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
And yes, I enjoyed chatting with you so much.